This week I'm going to share my experience and impressions moving from Mac OS to Windows 10. Well, hey everybody, it's Hudson. Welcome to this week's Approach in the Seam. For those of you that have been watching this series for a while, you know it's about all things photographic, and I like it to be a conversation. Well, about a month ago, I put out the word that I was planning to switch from Mac to Windows, or at least test the water switching from Mac to Windows after the latest Apple announcement about the Mac Pro, its pricing, and its specs. And I got a lot of questions from people wanting to know more. And for those of you that are watching this series, you know, please put in those questions. I really take them seriously in the comments section. You can email me. I'm easy to get a hold of. Join in this conversation. And I really want to thank everybody who's been subscribing and liking the channel and sharing it. So this week we're going to talk computers. We're going to talk about the tools that we use to edit our images. You know, years and years and years ago when I first got into computers, I was a Windows user, and it was Vista that bumped me from Windows to Mac. It was just a terrible operating system. I couldn't stand it. I moved to Mac. I never looked back until this year. You know, I've been using a Mac Pro, a trash can Mac Pro. I do a lot of high-end work with ultra-high resolution panoramic mergers for big installations, you know, wall-sized installations in trade shows, those kinds of things. I do a lot of video editing. I'm doing more and more 4K video editing. And my 2013 trash can Mac Pro is getting a little aged. And I'm not a big fan of the all-in-one idea with the iMacs. I know the iMac Pro is a powerful machine. So I was waiting for the Mac Pro announcement, and then I was just disappointed at the specs that they introduced at the price point that they named it at. So I know it's designed, you know, more for JPL and NASA and other government three-letter agencies and huge production houses with unlimited budgets. But for someone like me, I felt like there's a gap that they created. And, you know, I've heard some good things about Windows 10 from some people that I really respect. So I went ahead, I ordered this Dell XPS Special Edition, really maxed out tower. It's got an i9-9900 Intel processor, a very fast processor. It's got 64 gigabytes of RAM, a terabyte M2 SSD, really fast on the board system memory. It's got Thunderbolt 3 along with a whole bunch of USB 3.1 Gen 2 connections, so lightning fast input output via external devices. And I decided I would give it a little test drive. So I've got it bolted under my desk. I've got it connected into a Drobo 5D3 that has all of my 14 terabytes of photo and video files over the past, you know, long number of years. I'm backing that up to another Drobo, an older 5D, that's a slower connection, but it's working just fine just backing that up. And I'll talk about the software I'm using for backup now that I don't have Time Machine or ChronoSync, which I used with Mac. I'll talk about some of the things that I really like about the PC, some things that I miss from the Mac. All in all, I'm extremely happy. I don't find myself having that big a disruption moving one operating system to the other. I feel like it's smooth, it's stable, and this whole machine is way more powerful than my Mac Pro was, even though I had it maxed out with 64 gigs of RAM, and I've been upgrading it over the years. I've got this whole cheat sheet here full of things I want to share. I'm going to do a screen cap that you can watch some of the things I'm doing on screen. I've also got this as a PDF document. There are some download links for any of you interested in making the jump from PC to Mac. I have some cool tips and tricks to share with you to make that process a lot easier and I think a little bit more enjoyable. And I've got links here to other resources, and you can download that for free. I've got the link in the video description. Super simple, so you don't have to stop, pause, take notes. You can just download this document that I'm going over. All right, so I'm going to jump over here. You know, one of the first things I noticed in Windows is when you click on the Start menu, off the bat, it has, let's see, I'll pin this to start, and I'll pin, you know, some of my apps to the Start menu. You open it up, and there's a whole cluster of stuff pinned over here on the Start menu. And I found that annoying, and I found all you have to do to get rid of it is click each one and say Unpin from Start. And now the next time you click on this Start menu, you get a nice, clean-looking list of just your apps. So The other thing I found was, in the beginning, whatever's running pops up down here with a light underneath it, a lot like Mac's dock. It's really, really similar. Well, I found that anything that you want down on that dock, similarly, you can just right-click it. Let's find something I don't have, alarms and clocks. I can, while it's actually up and going, let's find something I don't have, Creative Cloud. I can go more, I can say pin to taskbar, that's it, you have to hit more. Pin to taskbar, well now all of a sudden that's pinned down here, just like it was on your dock in Mac. I'm a person who always liked my dock on Mac to hide and appear. All you have to do is right click, go to taskbar settings, and you can automatically hide the taskbar if you want. You can turn that off by clicking the toggle switch there. Now they're just popped up all the time. Really, really, really easy. Super similar to Mac. You get all that kind of clutter out of your start menu. You've just got a list of apps there. You can pin whatever you want easy access to any of the time right down on the taskbar. You'll also find that the programs that are always running, instead of being up at the top right as they are on Mac, there's just a little arrow here. You can click and go into any of your kind of background apps that are running. You'll get to know what each of those icons mean, just like you do on the Mac. Your volume is right there. There's notifications that you can click. Really, really similar, actually. So you can set that all up very, very Mac-like. If you want to personalize your desktop, you just right-click your desktop and you go to Personalize. And when you're in here, you'll see there's a Colors section. Obviously, you can change your background. You can bring in pictures of your own. I've got pictures that I've chosen for my desktop backgrounds here. You've also got Colors. And to get that nice kind of dark theme, you go in here for your default app mode and click Dark. Then I've chosen as a Windows color this Storm color, and that gets you a nice kind of dark mode look to Windows 10 that's really similar to Mojave, and it'll help take advantage of those OLED screens that actually turn off sections that are black if you want to save power. One thing that I use a ton on my Mac is the Expose, which is where you can just make a gesture, or I've got my MX Master mouse, this little button that's under my thumb mapped where I tap it and I get all these different desktop views, and I can switch from desktop to desktop and I could add more desktops, whatever. Well, that particular mode is carried over exactly in Windows 10. So the cool thing was I didn't even have to remap my MX Master mouse button. Boop, tap it, there it is. I can switch desktops, I can add them. It's very, very similar. So that was a thing that was just huge for me. You can even tap the button and just swipe to go back and forth, which is the same kind of gesture situation that you had in Mac. One thing that I found I wanted to do right off the bat was optimize the Windows Explorer to be a little more like Mac's Finder. I will admit that one of the things I miss in Mac is the Finder. The Finder is just more elegant than Windows File Explorer. And I've found some third-party apps that have all the functionality of Mac's Finder, but they're just not quite as elegant. And I'm actually finding that with some more use, Windows Explorer or File Explorer is not so bad. So the way I've done it, I'm actually starting to enjoy it, is with a couple of different settings. So I right-click this left panel and I turn off Expand to Current Folder. I do not want that little check mark checked. And I choose Show All Folders. That's two settings that really help. And then when you go in, another thing is any files that you're frequently using. So, let's go into my main storage folder. And let's say I wanted LUT Creations to be something I could get to anytime I want. If I just right-click that and I say Pin to Quick Access, boom, it pops up here in Quick Access. So it's always right there in that quick little drop down that I can open or close. If I go into any of these, say I go into my video library, and then I want to go into some, I don't know, time lapse, and I want to look at delicate arch. You can see that I've got this breadcrumb trail up here. It's not quite the column view that we had in Mac, but you can back in and out really easily in the same way, just by double clicking. And it works very, very similarly. You just have to remember to look up here. You don't have a column with everything in each column. I hope that they'll set that up eventually. But right now, this works just fine. I just click backwards to the breadcrumb. If you don't uncheck this expand to current folder setting, then these turn into trees that start going out into the right side of this panel, and it gets really annoying to me. I'd just rather use the breadcrumb trail at the top and turn that off. So another thing that I've found that was a little bit annoying when I first used Windows was their desire to make you use their browser called Microsoft Edge. And one thing that happened a lot was you go down here and you want to type in looking for software or looking for an app or doing a web search. It's a lot like Spotlight, but it would always default to Edge. Their browser would default to Bing, their search engine. And I found a cool website. I'm going to put a link to it that gave me a really simple, took me like 2 minutes or even less to download a couple things, tweak a couple settings, and boom. Now if I want to search the internet, if I want to find out about flying squirrels, it will immediately default to Chrome, which is my preferred app or my preferred browser. So you can set it up for your preferred browser, your preferred search engine. I've got Google going. It is actually quite a nice system. You can type in here Premiere, and the minute I start typing it, up comes the app I'm after. It'll search documents, it'll search everything. It's very Spotlight-like and very quick. One thing that I really like in Windows, and it's appropriate that I like it in Windows, is whenever I want to resize an app, I can just pull it up to the top. It automatically becomes full size. If I pull it back, it's right back to what it was. A thing that I really, really enjoy is having two windows open to move files from one place to another. So if I right-click my Windows File Explorer down at the bottom and open another version, so I've got two of them now, I drag one over to the right where my cursor touches the right, you'll see a little shaded rectangle open, boom. That half of the screen is now that, and I can choose to fill the other half of the screen with any of these other apps. I'm going to choose that one. So now I have two perfectly sized apps. If I wanted to put it to another one, I could bring this one back down, change its size, grab this one, pull it over. Let's have my web browser on the left. Boom. It's just really, really nice. Up at the top, fill it up. You just literally have a really nice time sizing windows. I find that super, super helpful. So another thing that's a little tricky for those of us that are Mac centric and have been for a long time is the keyboard buttons, and the fact that Alt is where we're used to the Apple, the Command key being, and in Windows, the Control key that's under your pinky finger does a lot of the commands that we're used to the Apple key that was under our thumb doing. And so for me, instead of learning all that anew, I just remapped the keys on my keyboard. There's an app to do that. It's called Sharp Keys. I'll just go down here and I'm going to type in Sharp Keys, and whoop, up comes this little app. It's going to give me a warning that's not a Microsoft app. We see that with Apple a lot too, but boom, there it comes, and you can literally remap one key on your keyboard to another. And I did several things. I turned off the insert key, the INS key on the keyboard. And that's just a key that annoys me, whether it's Mac or whether it's Windows, because if you accidentally bump it, all of a sudden, instead of inserting text into your document, it overwrites with the text that you're typing and just goes character for character over. So I just like to turn that off. I always want to just be inserting. If I want to overwrite some text, I'll just highlight it first. And I switched the Alt key to Control, and I switched the Control key to the Windows key, and then the Windows key to the Alt key, and now everything performs just like I'm used to with the Mac. I hold down my thumb in the spot where I'm used to the Command key being in Mac, and I've got, that plus X equals cut, that plus C equals copy, that plus V equals paste, all those same controls. It even works in a lot of apps. For, if I hit that in Q, it'll quit apps like Adobe's apps and OM1's apps and another number of other creative apps that are just mapped to do that. So speaking of which, I don't even have to show them, but if you're an Adobe user, everything just works perfectly. You log into the Creative Cloud, download the apps, they work exactly the same on the PC as they do on the Mac. Same thing with OM1 software. I'm having just faster performance in all those apps. I don't notice any hiccup. It wasn't hard to find my files the minute I pointed my projects or my folders with images. Boom, everything was just fine. Let's see. So really, there's no performance hiccup there. I will give a little caveat. I think if you're an iOS user and you're really heavy into that integration with iMessage and FaceTime and all that stuff between your phone and your computer, you may feel a hiccup. I've always preferred sort of the customizability and file control that I have with Android, and I've been a Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Contacts, Hangouts user, and so for me, those apps work exactly the same on PC as they do on Mac. They all downloaded, and I have really basically no difference in that experience. It might even integrate a little bit nicer. A big thing I notice is when I'm transferring files, the way that it works in Windows, you can pause the file transfer. Let's say you need that throughput for some other task that you're doing and then just hit play. It's like a play pause button. Also, if you bump a drive and it gets disconnected during a data transfer, it'll automatically pause. You can reconnect the drive and hit play and it'll just keep going without a hiccup, without having a broken file transfer. And that's definitely not the case in Mac. If you accidentally bump, say an SSD connected to your laptop and it breaks the connection, all of a sudden you just have an error and you have to start all over. So in this case, pretty darn cool. Kudos to Windows for being able to interrupt a file transfer for a broken connection and just restart right where it was at the second that connection was broken. Let's see, what else? Oh, if you want to get into, if you want to do screenshots, I know a lot of us in Mac world are used to hitting, Apple Shift 4 to take just a snapshot of part of your desktop. Well, if you hit the Alt Shift S, and if you remap your keyboard, it's going to be Control Shift S, if you've got it remapped like mine is. You hit that, it opens up this capture window where you can just drag and create a screenshot. Boom, you can save that. That comes up in your notifications, and you can save that screenshot into a folder of screenshots and name it, or you can copy it and paste it right into your email or your messaging app or what have you. It's really, really handy. So that's a cool trick. Also, just the print screen switch or button on the PC keyboard will do a complete screenshot just with a hit really quick. If you want to get into power options on your system, you can just run down here. I'm going to kill these windows because we don't need them open right now. But if you just go down here, you can just right click the start button and you'll get a different menu. If you left click start, you get a list of apps, and you get documents, photos, settings, power on, power choices. If I right click it, I get a whole bunch of more power user settings, the network connection, disk management, and settings is kind of the newer Windows control panel, and it's way more nuanced and nice. If you go into displays, you can go back. It's got all these different settings that you might want to tweak and use. So a lot of your power user settings are right here. If you just right click start, they're all available right there, which I think is super handy. The one trick is for those of you who have Mac formatted external hard drives that you want to be using with Windows. There's a software company called Paragon. I'll put a link in this cheat sheet that's downloadable. Paragon makes HFS Plus for Windows, and if you just install that, it's like, I don't know, $10 or something. It's not terrifically expensive. It might be $20. And you install that, and all of a sudden, Windows recognizes all those HSF Plus drives. If you're someone who, like me, who's going to use a Mac laptop still with a PC desktop or vice versa, you can download NTFS for Mac from the same software company, and both platforms will read each other's drives and write to each other's drives. You're no longer limited to that read-only problem that you had. So that's really cool. That overcomes a big impediment. I haven't really noticed a performance drop-off either. So finally here, I'm getting really, really close. I have a backup software application that I really have found that I like called GoodSync, and I'll put a link to that too. There's a free version, and the free version has basically all the functionality. There's no advertising or anything. for doing a left to right backup to completely clone and synchronize 2 folders or 2 drives or whatever it is that you want. Or it has two-way syncing that's all incremental. It's really dead simple to use. It takes just a few minutes and you're syncing files. It's very, very intuitive. If you want to have that automated where it's happening, you know, every hour or every 6 hours or every day or every week, then you need to pay, I think it's $49 for the software, but it's really easy to use. I'd say it's even easier to use than ChronoSync that I've been using for a long time on Mac. It's a great, great piece of software. And then I think the last little hiccup, the weird thing with Windows, which is, you know, another, along with the Finder being a little bit more elegant than Windows File Explorer, is the fact that Windows still uses this kind of archaic system where it assigns letters to each drive in your system. So it assigns, you know, it still saves A and B like we had floppies in the old days. For those of you that don't know what floppies are, just disregard that. But for those of us who've been in computers for a while, I mean, you had the different floppy drives, those are still reserved. C drive is your main disk for the operating system. D drive is a secondary disk. For me, I've created a really fast scratch disk on this system. E is usually reserved for an optical drive, which most computers don't even have anymore. This did come with a DVD, with a Blu-ray burner, which is nice. And then you've got F through Z that get assigned to other drives. And one thing that I've noticed is if you're using, you know, I use a lot of these portable SSDs with my laptop and I move them back and forth. Well, these are exFAT formatted. They work either on Windows or Mac, just interchangeably, no problem. I can move files back and forth between. I even have my Lightroom catalog drive that I've been using forever on Mac just plugged in here, no conversion necessary. I'm running Lightroom off the same disk. But the problem is if you're disconnecting drives and reconnecting drives all the time like I am, it will initially just put the latest the first available drive letter, so maybe it's drive I or drive H or drive J, and it'll assign that. And so, you know, if you're constantly unplugging and plugging drives, it'll keep trying to assign that same drive letter to different drives. Well, there's a way around that I figured out. If you just plug in your drives and you go into the disk utility or disk management, which you can get to by just right-clicking Start once again and go into disk management, it comes up and it's got a list of your hard drives. It looks maybe a little old Windowsy and scary, but you've got all these partitions on disk 2. This is my main operating system, and it has recovery data and stuff on it, like any Mac hard drive would. And then I've got some other drives on here. And I have this one little Samsung T5 plugged in here, and it's map drive W. And I'm going to recommend that you're going to assign permanent drive letters to your drives, and you're going to do it by going backwards down the alphabet. So I have mine done Z, Y, X, W. You get the idea, backwards down, because the way that Windows assigns drives to new drives coming in are from the first available drive letter from the lower end of the alphabet. And so this, by locking them in here, they're not going to get overwritten by a new drive coming in. And all you have to do is right-click that drive, or you can click it up here, and you say change drive letter and path. And you can go in here and say change, and you can assign whatever drive letter is available. For me, this one's W, so I'm just going to click cancel. But if you clicked OK, it would warn you that software that uses that drive might not recognize it with the new letter. I'd say do this initially. And that way you won't have to be telling Lightroom where your files on portable drives are all the time. You just assign them Z, Y, X, and backwards down the alphabet. All right, so that's basically my experience with Windows. It's been overwhelmingly positive. I'm finding that everything's running about twice as fast as I have with my Mac Pro. And you know, to give you an example, rendering a 4K video out to 1080 the way that I normally do, say a half-hour video, used to take about 40 minutes on my Mac Pro, and I'm rendering it in, you know, less than 8 minutes on this system. So quite a bit faster, and just a lot of fun. You know, I hope that if you're interested in doing it, you'll download this list of cheat sheets. I've got the link right there. It's got all the links to the software that I talked about and just a little roadmap of all the things I talked about to kind of optimize Windows for the Mac user. I've been enjoying it. I can't complain a bit. It's been kind of fun, to be honest with you. So that's it for this week, and we'll talk to you next week. Oh my God, one caveat that I totally forgot to mention about this amazing Dell XPS Special Edition. I figure if you're watching at this point, you really are interested in potentially moving to a Windows 10 machine. This is a great one, but when I first got it, it constantly sounded like there was a jet airplane taking off. It was running hot, and its fan was running at full throttle when I would just be cataloging and culling images. And so I did a little research online. I busted the machine open. It's very simple. You don't even need any tools. And then I took the heatsink off. You do need a screwdriver for that. And put new thermal paste. It had a little pad between the processor and the heatsink that cools it. And I just scraped that pad off with a plastic bicycle tire iron, something that's not going to scratch. You just peel it off of the heatsink, which is made out of copper, and you wipe it down with alcohol, and then you wipe the processor back off with alcohol, just get them both perfectly clean. Put a little bit of thermal paste on there, put it back on, screwed it back down. It's running cool and quiet now. But kind of a little harsh on Dell there. They've put an awesome system together. I wish they'd just taken a little more time putting the thermal paste in there. It's not a hard job. If you don't want to do it, if you bought this system and yours is like mine and ran hot and loud, I'm sure that a local computer shop would do it for $50 or something. But just a little tip, if you get one and it's running really hot, that was the problem for me. Solved it easily.